it is clear to me that one of the critical components of an organization is the people that represent the organization. And to me, again, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to work with future instructors who aspire to become GUE instructors.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Anybody who seeks a higher level of training will eventually find themselves at the door of global underwater explorers. As you navigate its hallways in search of knowledge and guidance, you will inevitably come across the name Gideon Liew. It was an honor and a privilege to sit down and have a conversation with him. Curiosity pushed him further. Mentoring the next generation has now become the fuel that elevates his purpose. Please enjoy. Gideon, how are you doing this wonderful evening?
Very good, thank you. And thank you for inviting me onto the podcast.
No, it is I who must thank you. I really appreciate you coming on here, especially because you're in the Philippines teaching. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What course are you teaching, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm teaching a technical diver level 2 class. We are just about halfway through the class. We are planning to start with the final phase of training, which are experienced dives. So this is where I start to have a little bit of fun because we get to actually go diving.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. But first, I want to thank you
Yep.
very much for joining the podcast once again. It's amazing to have you on. I must admit, I feel like there hasn't been, or I haven't been to a place where I haven't heard your name come up at least once or twice. Either here in Southeast Asia or Mexico, or the Americas, I should say. So let me actually just throw
Okay.
throw this first question out. Where are you from originally?
I am originally from Singapore. Singapore is where I was born and is home for me. That's where family and friends are. But as you know, Singapore is not a very conducive place for diving or diving training. So a lot of my training and diving experience takes place in many different locations.
Okay. Well, I guess I will throw my second question out now. So, being from a
Mhm.
place that there's not, spectacular diving,
Mhm.
although I have heard quite a bit about the diving in Singapore, and I do wish to, or I will at some point have to go check it out. Palau Hantu, Palau Hantu.
Pulau Hantu, yes,
Yeah, there we
that's
go, there we
correct.
go.
It's Pulau
I've
Hantu
heard
is
about it.
in Malay.
Oh, okay.
So Pulau Hantu is actually literally translated is Ghost Island.
Well, I am curious about that now. But let me throw this question out. So, being from Singapore, tell me about that first breath underwater. Tell me about that first moment. Was it amazing? Was it horrible? Was it I love this? Tell me all about how you got into scuba diving.
Well, it's interesting because the dive when I first started diving, it was actually in Singapore, in Singapore waters. This was back in 1984 when I did my open water class. At the time, I was 17. I had just come out of school after my O levels, and I was looking for something exciting to do. So I signed up for a diving class. I looked up dive center and a dive instructor in the classifieds and went up to sign up for my open water class. And I think that the moment I got in the water, I knew it was something that I love. So it's been a real journey for me since then. But I guess I'm one of the few lucky people at such a young age. I found something that I was very passionate about.
So, is this something that you took up by yourself? Did you go and take the course with a friend, or was it just something like I want to do this? I'm gonna go and do it by myself.
It was the holidays after the O levels, so I had a few weeks to decide what I wanted to do then, and I think right away I wanted to do something exciting, and I've always wanted to try diving. So I looked up the classifieds, and I just decided to sign up for a class. At the time, I mean, I didn't know many friends who would think of coming of going diving with me. So it was just at the spur of the moment.
That's awesome because usually, some people need that like buddy or somebody to go
Yeah,
into it with. So that's
yeah,
amazing that you went into it by yourself. I do have to ask this question because, well, actually,
sure.
I kind of wanted to throw this out there. It's funny because I'm a little bit older, so I do remember a
Hmm.
time when you looked in the newspaper at the classifieds for things. Nowadays, you could just go online and stuff.
Yep,
So
yep.
was it was it but I do remember kind of, a time before the internet. And so were there sections in the classifieds that just said
Yes.
scuba diving, and you just like how was
Yeah.
it labeled on there?
I think it was labeled under courses or under sport activities,
Ah, okay,
something
okay,
like
okay.
that. It was a long time ago. I can't really remember, but it was, back in the day when you're looking for, a class or some sort of event, you would look up the classifieds in the papers. I mean, it just came up in my mind. I just remembered back then that, I was just looking up the papers, and I think, in one of the class, it's a little square box, right, among other a whole bunch of advertisements, and the little box would say, interested in scuba diving, come look for this person or call this number.
I love that. I think that's amazing because, yeah, usually, I mean, today it's obviously very different, but it's funny because I do remember a time when that's how you searched for things
Yes,
were through the classifieds. And I can't even remember the last time I've seen a
right.
classified section. But can you, do you, can you tell me a little bit about the training? Was it drastically different than it like training today? Like you go to a pool, do your confined water skills, go out into the open water. How was the training you went through back then?
I think that it's pretty much the same. I think throughout the years, when I first started, and then after making it a career, becoming an instructor for different agencies and teaching, open water classes. One of the things I feel is that training since those days till now has been very consistent. I think if there's any change in consistency, it would be more or less about the amount of time the instructor was willing to spend with the student. But I think the components of the class are pretty much the same. Now, this is of course before I came to join this organization that I'm working with at the moment called Global Underwater Explorers. And I think they've taken a different approach towards open water training.
I definitely agree. On the podcast, I've spoken to quite a few, instructors or GUE divers at this point, and it is nice to see the path that they've chosen and they've kind of stuck to their guns with it, right? They haven't
Mhm.
really made it easy. I don't want to say easier,
Yes.
that's the wrong thing to say, but they had an idea, they went with it, and it is nice to see that they're sticking with it because
Hmm.
I feel like
Yep.
once
Yep.
organizations start to get a little bit bigger, things start to slack a little bit. But before we go down that route,
Yep.
when you first did that open water class and you said it was something you knew you wanted to do, did you have an idea of this is something that I would like to teach, or was it just kind of fun? Let's just have fun with it. Let's just do some fun diving.
Oh, when I started diving, there was no teaching or doing scuba diving as a career was far from my mind. I was only 17 then, I was waiting to go into military service. So it was a time for me to go and try out different things that I've always wanted to do. And for me, it was definitely just fun at the time. Coming into it as a career was actually a coincidence, sort of a coincidence at a later time. I think after I served military service, I had a friend who, after he left, had gone into scuba diving as a business. And he had a small dive shop in Tioman called Sharky's. So I remember the time when I got out of the military and I think I was looking for a job. He told me to come over and join him, get a couple of dives in, have some fun. And I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. So this friend of mine, since I was there, was saying, hey, look, since you're here, why don't you help me out? I started with filling tanks, driving the boat, became a dive master with him, and then I started getting customers out for trips and so on. So before I knew it, I eventually became an instructor for him, and my career in diving took off from there.
Tiaman is a wonderful place. I have visited there a few times. I haven't been back there in about a year, but I really do enjoy it. And it seems to be quite the spot where a lot of people go to, especially in the Malaysia, Singapore area. A lot of people seem to
Yes.
flock to that island. It's a nice little spot. Have you been back there recently?
Oh, it's been a while since I've been back there, but I think throughout the initial part of my career, I was going to, I mean, right in the beginning, I was living, no, 1 week on, 1 week off with my friend, working with him in Malaysia. And I think it came to a point where when I started a family, I had to come back home to Singapore. So I looked for a more permanent job with a dive center in Singapore, and I worked with different centers back then. I remember that my initial start in the career wasn't something that I planned. It wasn't something that was, thought out. It was just one thing happening after the next. So I'm not complaining because, it's been a real adventure. I wouldn't change one thing about the way it's happened for me. So I feel very privileged to have been in a job that I am passionate about all these years.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, and it's definitely taken you to quite a few places that I've from what I've
Yep.
seen and heard. So
Yep.
I apologize. So there's a bird in the background. That's my. It's not a real bird. It's a bird that we gave to the cat to play with, and when she gets
I
bored,
see.
she hits it. And I forgot to turn it. I didn't think of it, so I
That's all right. That's all right.
apologize
I
about
think
the
it's
bird.
it's it's in a way sort of nice as well, and it gives me the impression that we are talking in a deserted island somewhere with birds
Well,
in the background.
yeah. So
Human.
yeah. Yeah, the cat, I swear, it's she
Yeah,
likes to
exactly.
be seen. So Tima, I just a random question. Does your
Yep.
friend, is he still in the diving business? Does he still have
Yes,
a shop?
he's very much in the business. That the friend I'm talking about is Christopher Lee. He presently runs a dive business called Simply Scuba, and he
Oh,
still
okay.
to this day continues to run dive trips to Tioman, the
Okay.
original dive center that I started my career with him long ago. This is back in like 93.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's you've definitely have had some years of experience in the dive industry. So
Mhm.
moving through the ranks of becoming an instructor, at that point in time, when did you, or did you know you wanted to kind of go into the technical side of it, or was it just kind of fun recreational diving still? When did you want to, I guess, step up the skill level instruction wise and personally?
Well, and I think that most people who do diving will probably be able to identify with this. You start at a specific level and then you get excited, you want to learn more, you move into different kinds of environments. I was lucky enough to have opportunities to experience different environments like deep sea wrecks in the South China Sea. And of course, with each experience, it led me to appreciate how diverse the underwater world is. There's so many things to appreciate, not just marine life, corals and fish. You've got historical shipwrecks. You've got the mysteries of the deep, right? I think one of the things that I remember as a child is, this desire to explore. pretending to be an explorer and then going out and trying to find things to investigate and discover new places or new things that has not been seen by others before. So this adventure really appealed to me. I really wanted to get more into it. So of course, any opportunity to try and learn more about, the different kinds of environments and places underwater that you can appreciate, every opportunity I got, I just went for it. Interestingly enough, I'm going back to the point you made earlier about, different agencies being, sometimes becoming a little slack. I think that that's inevitable with large organizations. But one of the things I've always appreciated about organizations, Party was the earliest, I think, they started in 69. And I appreciate that there are such agencies, despite, the many things that we say about the training that they provide. The fact that they actually provide formal training to people who are interested to take this up has really made the difference. I could imagine friends, old friends of mine would tell me, oh, they learn diving from their naval diver buddies or friends, people who've had no formal training in diving, jumping into the water and doing stuff. That's pretty, I would say,
Scary.
uh, scary for me. That's right. So, even with that, I think if you looked at the years, over the years, all of these agencies has also evolved. I think the quality of training that the different agencies provide now is actually it's actually gotten better. The standards, people are now more clear about what they want and they are more discerning. So I think if you look at the type of training that is being offered nowadays, I think it's a far cry from the kind of training that I did, many years ago. I mean, having said that, the training is pretty much similar in terms of content, in terms of the curriculum, the flow of training. I think that instructors are now demanding, students to perform better, to perform to required standards, before they are given a qualification. I think in the earlier years, it didn't really matter. It was just like you did training and then you just got the card at the end of it. It might still exist nowadays. I think one of the things I would say to people who are looking for diving training is to find out more about the instructor that you're doing training with, because it is the instructor that's providing the training that makes the difference. So instructors who are different, it's not difficult to find them. They're usually quite successful. They've had many years of experience. Usually instructors who are referred to them by word of mouth, because many of their students have had good experiences with the instructor.
I agree. And to be honest, I apologize because I probably I didn't mean to come off like that because I one thing I do hate is the agency bashing. And I
No,
mean
no.
it's it's all over the place and you know definitely up to the individual. Let's face it, most agencies there's bad apples, there's good apples.
Hmm.
There's the ones that
Yep.
are looking for numbers, there's the ones that are looking for
So.
quality. I definitely know instructors from, I mean, I'm sure you as well know instructors from
Mhm,
multiple
mhm.
different agencies. They're just as good as any other agency. It's just they choose to, that's who they teach with, right? So,
So.
no, I completely agree. And, a friend of mine long time ago, he's like, the cream always rises to the top, right? So the best of the best will rise to the top no matter what
Yeah.
they're doing. You can put them in any situation and they're gonna overcome. I do like to see that. So I do apologize if I came off across as an agency
Oh
basher,
no,
because but no, you make a very, very valid point.
no need to apologize, Nick. I mean, it's the same thing for me. When I was in the industry back then, I would have all of these questions. I personally wanted to seek out, good quality training. I wanted to be able to provide good quality training myself. So it is not unusual for us to look at what is available out there, and you would find the good and the bad, right? So it's a good thing, I think, for us to keep in check, for me personally as an instructor, what I am providing. am I providing quality training? Is this what my objective is in my career, right? Is it to make a quick profit, or to try to get business by providing minimalistic training or quality of training and charging cheaper prices? Let's just say I've tried all these different approaches, and I think that I've come down to, in the end, is that if you try to provide the best quality training that you think you can provide, that would be the best approach in terms of business, because people will then come back to look for you to seek out this quality of training.
So I am very curious because my perception, I feel like, is a little bit skewed because having diving a part of my life for 10 plus years,
Mhm.
I feel like obviously my idea, my thoughts of diving are very different than somebody kind of just coming into the industry. Obviously, when you kind of first come in, there's certain agencies that you hear more than others. And nowadays with the internet, the world's literally at your fingertips. You can research and find a lot
Mhm.
of different things. When you were going through your training practices, because I mean, I'll say it, or I feel that GUE
Mhm.
still is kind of a smaller agency
Yep.
compared to the other big names out there. How did you hear about GUE, and when did you decide to start approaching and going towards that style of diving?
Okay, I was, as you know, working with different dive shops back in the 90s, having been introduced into diving as a career with Chris from Simply Scuba. From our conversation about, what is good quality training, why do we do something like this? Can we provide better skills? What is better skills, defined? So I think that my first exposure to GUI was back in the day when I was starting to get into technical diving. Back in the day, again, without World Wide Web, there was this thing called email lists. I subscribed to this email list called Technical Divers or Tech Divers or something like that. It was essentially an email list of people who will be sharing experiences and ideas from different parts of the world. So there was this, a lot of mention about these world famous, legendary cave divers from Florida, who was the how should I say, the news of the day back in the day, because they were doing seemingly difficult dives, right? Doing significantly deep and long dives in the caves in Florida, doing it for research, being able to do some form of magical decompression that allowed them to be able to stay so deep for so long. So obviously, in my back in the day, in my quest for quality in training, these people who are doing these kind of dives, of course, fascinated me. So I wanted to find out a little bit more. I think a good friend of mine, Emil Teo, back in the day, also was a distributor for Halcyon equipment.
Oh, okay, okay.
Halcyon, if you know, is a equipment brand that is associated with GUI. But back in the day, that during that time, GUI had just started. GUI was incorporated in '98. So I was again fortunate, to come to know about GUI as an organization back in the early days. I actually was interested in this organization called WKPP, right? The Woodsville Cast Plains Project. So it was a group of divers who were involved in doing research, exploration of underwater caves in Florida, and providing the information that they gathered to, different agencies, government agencies, interest groups that were interested in the data that they gathered. So in order for them to be able to do these dives, they had to have unique practices. And I was very interested to find out, as with many other technical divers back in the day, how these guys were doing it. So my friend Emil actually engaged one of the training directors of GUI back in the day, Andrew Jojitsis, to come to Singapore, to come to Malaysia and conduct a GUI course. Now, during that time, fundamentals was just a new class. It was like a more of a workshop that you had to do before you would attend like the classes that GUE was known for back in the day was technical one and cave one, the technical and cave classes. We didn't have recreational classes. We didn't have an offering for people who were just starting off diving, right? It was known as the technical diving agency of the day. So in order for you to do Tech One, you had to do an sort of like a workshop, a fundamentals workshop, right? So it was like 2 days fundamental workshop, and then you go straight into Tech One, which was 5 days. So Emil invited Andrew, came over to Singapore, and there was he organized I think 2 or 3 classes, and for me that was like sort of like turning point, shall I say, in my career, because it was like, wow, to me, that was quality. That was the first time I ever saw a diver who was able to maintain trim buoyancy, flawless buoyancy, mid-water. Because prior to that, I've never seen divers being able to do that kind of skill at that level, right? And what was more interesting was that the training was very focused on developing a diver's, sense of awareness, situational awareness. Okay, what is the situation now? What is happening? What depth are you at? What time are you into the dive? Which direction are you going? Where is your teammate? So it was very challenging, but it was also eye-opening. It was like, we should be teaching divers to do all of this across the board. I'm a very simplistic person. So it's obvious to me that everybody should be practicing this. But then, this is the first time after a career over 5, 10 years that I've come across an agency that demands that level of standard, that has a standardized approach towards diving, that has a very defined way of developing awareness, almost to the point where it now becomes your responsibility. You need to be positioned well to your teammate. You need to be neutral in the water. You need to have good foundational skills, for many reasons, all of which are good, right? So to me, it was very obvious. It was very clear. And I think from the moment I did that class, I was like, this is the way I want to go. This is the way I want to dive. And I've never looked back since.
I love it. So just I have to ask because I'm always
Hmm.
curious. So how did you do in the class? Because I know for some people, they've been in the sport for a while. They take a fundamentals class. As you say, it's challenging, very eye opening.
Yeah,
How did you do in that class? Were your skills were
yeah,
they where you thought they were? And then my
yeah,
follow up question: how was the fundamentals class then, and how does it differ today, or is it very
yeah.
similar?
It's a good question because that was the question I asked myself when I did the class. I came away from the class thinking, wow, man, I thought I knew it all. I thought I was good in diving. I must say that I felt that I was privileged to get to know Chris and to get to train with him and learn from him because, even for Chris back in the early years, he was already, very focused on teaching divers how to be neutral, how to, the concept of neutral buoyancy and staying off the bottom, and being aware of your environment and not causing destruction, or hurting the reef in any way. But, it was with GUE that I saw how high a bar you can set for people who are truly keen on reaching a high level of standard. So when I did my Tech One, and of course it was very intensive class, I came away from that class just blown away. But I had actually thought that I had failed the class. I think that for the Tech One program, there were 7 of us that did the class, only 2 passed. Again, back in the day, GUE was known for that, known for being very challenging. Many people would sign up for the class, and a small percentage would pass. That's not necessarily a good thing. We can talk about that later. But coming back to that, I was like, I had thought that I had failed the class. It wasn't until I came back to Singapore and had a chance to sit down with the instructor for a final review when he told me, "Oh, okay, you're one of two persons that has passed." It was me and this other friend of mine who was my buddy in the class. Again, I was pretty surprised, but it was also good for me because as challenging as it was, as much as I was told I had passed the class, it was sort of like a change of standard for me. It now challenged me. I now aspire to want to aim even higher, to be even more controlled, to be even more aware, to be so that much more in control of the situation because I now knew it was possible.
So I've only taken a fundamentals course. Definitely walking away from that course, you
Hmm.
you have new boundaries. You have new limits,
Yes,
right? So or not
yes.
limits, that's just the wrong thing to say, but you have
No,
new
no, it's
goals.
good.
Yeah,
Mm,
you have new goals of okay, I know where I'm at, I know where I can be, and I know where I can go, essentially. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely completely agree with you. So well, that's pretty amazing though. Congratulations, being one of the
Thank you.
two out of the seven that passed.
Yeah.
Did you ever stay in contact with the other people that were in the course or the
Yes.
buddy?
Right now, just thinking off the top of my head, I think at least half the class is still around, and I'm still in fact, constant, regular contact with two, three of them. Good friends. I mean, we've gone our different ways. Not all of them are diving anymore, or as regularly as they should be. But no, I mean, it's also brought us together, made new friends. It's just been like I said, a turning point, a start for me, a new start for me in a different direction. I think there was also the other part of your question, right? How it has changed.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, so fundamentals, back then it was very intense. It was very challenging. And as I said earlier, a class that was challenging, you learn a lot, that's great. But if you have like more than 50% of the students in the class who are taking a class from your agency failing the class, then that doesn't speak very well of the type of education or training that the agency provides. Again, being fortunate to have come to know GUE in an early stage, I decided I wanted to become an instructor with them. And it was a process, but eventually I became one. And because it was at the beginning, at the start of the organization, I was privileged to know the founders and to associate with them. And I think eventually I became part of a group that was involved in developing the training council, the development of the training programs going forward with GUE. And I think that the changes that has resulted from how we started with fundamentals being a workshop and then being a class, a formal class, and then being a class that we had to separate from the technical training because fundamentals was developing foundational skills, that which was what was lacking with many students who did not succeed in those technical classes. So, in order to develop these skills, you need to develop it over time. So that is why fundamentals was taken out, and developed as an independent class. So you had to do fundamentals, you had to go away and practice, then you could come back and then participate in Tech One or Cave One. Now, of course, even with that, it wasn't enough. From, I don't know, maybe 70% fail, now you have like 40, 50% fail. What was still not working was the fact that even though we made fundamentals a requirement to attend fundamentals and then go away and practice and then come back to do Tech One, people were still failing because they didn't practice. So as much as they say, okay, now I know I practice, when they came back, they said, oh, Gideon, I'm sorry, family, because of work, I just didn't get the time to practice what we learned in fundamentals last. I think recently, for divers who aspire to want to go into technical or cave classes with GUI now, you have to obtain what we call a technical pass. At fundamentals, if you are aspiring to do Tech One, then after fundamentals, you need to go away and practice. And then when you think you're ready, you need to come back again to the instructor to be evaluated. We want to make sure that you are ready to do Tech One. So you need to demonstrate your skills. Okay, you say you've been practicing. Show me what level are your skills at now. Okay, it's good. I'll give you the tech pass. You go to tech one. So chances of you passing the class is much, much higher. Today, when I teach tech one, the percentage of fail is maybe like, 5%.
It's pretty good. That's a pretty big
Yeah,
change. Within that 5%, what are you seeing and why are they not passing? Just because they haven't spent the time to practice, or is there other things that you're seeing?
it's a whole bunch of things, a range of things that we see. But I think that I could generally say that for students that are still failing the class, it's still foundational skills, but more in terms of awareness. I
Okay.
can evaluate a student's ability to stay stable in the water, to be trimmed, to have a great frog kick and a backward kick. But it's more difficult to assess a person's situational awareness. And at the fundamentals level, that's not the focus. I mean, of course, we teach divers procedure. You need to know how to plan your dive. You need to know how to do equipment checks, position well with your buddy. So that's the foundation. But in the Tech 1 class, there's also training to test a person's ability to resolve, to react to situations, to resolve problems when they happen. So, when a person is under less stress, their ability to cope is much better than when they are under duress. So, in the Tech 1 class, we have ways and techniques to be able to add a little bit of stress to a person and see the outcome. And sometimes the outcome is not, how shall I say, desirable. So, we give feedback to the students. We say, okay, you need to develop some of these areas more, problem solving, problem resolution, and then come back and then be reevaluated again. But nowadays, it's really the trim and the buoyancy and the kicks that used to be the problem in the past. Now, all of that is taken care of by the tech pass.
Definitely stress. I mean, I know me personally, usually it's always a mental game, right? I'm my own worst enemy at times because once I get in my own
Oh,
head,
yeah.
it just all goes downhill very quickly. And I think a big problem too that I see, and I know one thing for me is when I get task loaded, so too many different
Hmm.
tasks to try to do, and it's to try to stop, think, act, however you want to go about it.
Oh, yeah.
But to bring it back just a little bit, I like to see, and I do see that it's still continuing
Hmm.
where with the organization, they're moving forward. Like they had the fundamentals class as a workshop before Tech 1, then they broke it into a
Yep.
fundamentals class. And I like to see
Hmm.
that they did that with the recreational and even with the fundamentals now with the new
Yeah.
standards that came out to where it's like, okay, well, now we have a few different points of entry and these are the things that you need to work on so it's not like a all or fail type of situation. And I don't think obviously it wasn't. I
Right.
mean, there was the what is it, the provisional that you could get, you go away, you work on it, you
Yep.
come back,
Yep.
you get more. But I like now that you can kind of start even before that, like, hey, let's do some recreational courses, build up those foundational skills, get more comfort. So I like to see that they're still evolving, but they're kind of sticking to that same plan that worked with fundamentals.
Yep. I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, that was the intention. I think that again, I've been privileged to be part of the process, of how the training has evolved over time with GUE from the beginning. This is one of the things I like about the agency too, right? It responds to the needs of the people who come through their training, right? We have training back in the day where it was a workshop and it had to be adjusted to consider the needs and the performance of divers who were coming out of the classes at the time. So I think that we are constantly changing. I think even now we have more instructors now. We have a very good board of directors. We've got a training council that is constantly looking for ways to improve the training programs that we have at the moment.
Just a random question. So I know you're an instructor trainer, but what roles do you have in GUE?
Well, the part that I love the most is just teaching diving. I've got roles now to teach and develop instructors as well. Let's just say I prefer the diving training,
More than the
but
politics? There's
oh,
always
you know that
politics, right?
you know as well as yes. No, no, but I think that it is clear to me that one of the critical components of an organization is the people that represent the organization. And to me, again, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to work with future instructors who aspire to become GUE instructors. So yeah, we do have great trainers, all around the world who is continually looking for ways to expand, develop the organization by bringing more people into the organization as instructors. Having said that, I think you would notice as well that GUI is not really an organization about numbers. I remember a conversation that I had with Jared about what the goal or the objective of the organization should be. And us as instructors or instructor trainers, what do we want as an organization in terms of how to grow the organization? And I think that his answer was very honorable. Right? I think he wasn't interested in developing the organization into something that was as large as the other organizations in the world. That wasn't the goal at all. It was, still very much a focus on the quality of training that we provide. And I appreciate that because I'm all about that as well. To me, being able to provide I think the word I'm looking for is value, because I appreciate that as well. If I attend a class, what I value is what I learn from the class. How can I become a better diver? So that's what I think Jared, in his fundamental goal or approach in setting up the organization is about. I think for us as being passionate about diving as well, we get excited because there's so many things that we feel we can share with the diving public in general. Because, how to be more effective, how to perform better, how to be safer. I think that there have been many approaches that we practice in GUE that is very practical. Some people I found have misunderstood GUE to be very, rigid, very inflexible, very demanding. But I think that people don't realize that GUE is more about how we can be all of those things, but be practical, pragmatic at the same time. It's entirely false, when we say, okay, everybody must walk in the same way, talk in the same way, dress in the same way, do what they're told unquestioning, without question. That's not true. I think that the idea, the goal about GOE is to develop divers, to be thinking divers, to be divers who are confident to be able to make effective choices and decisions. Because diving and diving safety is really all about that. It's about making good choices.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, when a diving situation goes wrong, it's a lot of the time the result of poor choices or mistaken choices that we make. I think that one of the things I personally have gotten out of GUE is having the ability to be able to now define what is good for me. What factors should I think about or consider when I want to do a dive? To me, as simple as that sounds, I think a lot of divers are challenged by these things.
As an instructor trainer, you have, I'm assuming, quite a few people come to you to be evaluated to become an instructor. One of the
Yep.
things that I
Mhm.
like to see is that you have to be evaluated by different instructors in order to get the
Yes.
signatures to move forward. When you're going through those courses, do you see a common challenge that people have to overcome? Like, what is the most common thing that you see that doesn't check the box essentially to go on to the next process, if that makes sense?
Okay, it does. I mean, when you ask this question, there are two things that come to my mind, and they're sort of interrelated. One is the fact that when we are looking to develop an instructor, it depends very much on the organization's view of what they want as what qualifies a person as an instructor. There's such a wide variation of what people expect or what people think is suitable, right? Even within GUE in itself, it's a struggle for us to come to terms with what we would set as a standard for the instructors. To give you an example, right? We have this standard for divers where, in order for you to move from one level of training to the next, you have to get some experience first.
Yes.
there is like a minimum experience requirement for you to move from level 1 to level 2. And the number we have is 25. And this number has been debated a lot. It's like 25 is too little, 25 is too much. Some people are of the opinion 25 too little. Okay, so what is enough? 100 dives. Now, of course, if you look at a typical diver, for a person to be able to do 100 dives, it may require a few months or a few years to achieve, right? Let alone the standards for an instructor. The standards for instructors have even gone up. If you look at our recent change in standards, instructors would have to have a minimum of 200 dives, 300 dives before they become instructors, as opposed to like 100 in the past. So, in deciding how experienced a person should be before they are able to, all the prerequisites that we have to come up with in order for an instructor to begin training with us is a dilemma, right? We want to be practical in one sense, something that people are able to achieve in general, but on the other hand, enough that the person has enough experience to be discerning as an instructor. The other thing is, okay, when they qualify to become instructors in our training, the training process is very long. We want to develop our instructors to be able to develop their own, not just to give them a script and teach from a script. We want to teach divers how to be able to teach, how to develop their own outlines, how to be able to present that information, how to be able to assess a student's ability to understand the information that you're providing them. And that actually requires a long time to develop. If you know, teachers take years in university to develop before they become qualified as teachers in schools. So how do we develop proper, effective instructors, within a short period of time? Despite this challenge, we try to come to terms with, what is sufficient. We still get a lot of people who tell me, Gideon, your GUE instructor training process is so difficult. You have to have different people to qualify you. You have to go through the ITC, which is long, and then you have to do internships after that. But to me, all this is really necessary. I think, to summarize, in developing instructors, I find a lot of instructors are very demanding, right? They want to be able to get all the information in a short period of time and expect to be ready to teach almost right away. It's difficult, right? So even now, I think that we're still trying to refine our instructor development process, but it seems to me each time we review, there is more. I don't know whether I can say obstacles. There is more that we add into what an instructor candidate is required to achieve. The requirements are now more demanding. And I think that the process is also just as robust as before, right? You have to have you have to have a trainer and evaluator sign you off. You have to go through relative amount of internships to develop any areas of improvement that they need to do. I think that you can also imagine, for someone who has the qualities of an instructor, like they are trained teachers, they have taught for other agencies before. The process is usually simpler, it's easier because they already have experience teaching and developing divers. But then we also have instructors who come into the training program who are new, and helping them to develop usually takes a longer time, usually takes more effort. So sometimes people are also challenged by the fact that they say, hey, how come this guy became an instructor so fast? And then this person took that much longer to become an instructor. So these are some of the challenges I face.
To be honest, that's one of the things that I applaud, because I do remember hearing that to become an instructor, it became a little bit more of a challenge, not challenge, a little bit of a longer process. And with the type of diving that people want to go and do when they approach GUE to take a course, it's essentially it is a very demanding environment. It's so
It
the
is.
person teaching should have the experience, because the last thing you want is to
Oh,
have an
yeah.
unexperienced person teach another unexperienced person, and then essentially, I mean, that's pretty much the blind leading the blind. So you want that person in charge to say, hey, these are the scenarios. To be, teaching the teachers is not an easy thing, I'm sure. So that's why I'm
No,
always kind of
it's not.
curious on the process of that. Couple last questions for you. I don't know how much
Sure,
time you
sure.
slotted for, or
No, I'm
are
I'm
scheduled.
I'm good.
So, and this goes back to what I was saying, just joining the forums and joining the many different groups. How has the growth been with the GUE community in Southeast Asia? Because I feel like it's a very big community in Southeast Asia these days. But from
Right.
where it must have started, being this, I mean, it's still even small in the States, but I feel like it's growing quite a bit where more people are seeking out this sort of
Yes.
training, more people are
Yes.
seeking out these standards. How has the growth been since your first fundamentals class? And I hate to ask this,
Hmm.
but so you must have been the first course. Were you the first GUE course in Southeast Asia? The course that you took? I hate to
No,
ask that. Sorry.
no, that's fine. I mean, as I said, my first GUE class was taught by Andrew Georgesis in Singapore. But, I think that there were one or two other Asians, Martin Lorenzo from the Philippines. Well, I know Martin for sure, who was also had the opportunity to train with GUE instructors, about the time when I started. But very, very little GUE training back then. I mean, simply because GUE had just started. I mean, when I became an instructor with GUE, there were only 20, a little more than just under 30 instructors globally, worldwide. Today, I think we're almost 300. It's been 20 years, 20 plus years, from 20 to 200 plus 300. It doesn't sound like a lot. And I think it's because, again, of the robust training program that we have for instructors to develop. However, I also think that it is because, like as you said, because of communities. There's more demand for GUE instructors in GUE training now. I think that more people are beginning to see the value of becoming GUE instructors and are willing to go through the training because they see the value in the training to become GUE instructors now. Personally, I feel that and I hope that the development of GUE as an organization, the growth, I hope will be exponential. I mean, it was a slow start. It took a while, but the hope is that with the growth of with this new interest in GUE, that more people will come to learn, and there'll be more demand for training, such that they will also spur the desire for people to become GUE instructors to provide that training. And I think, or I hope, that that will mean an exponential growth for GUE down the road. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like, let's just say when I started as an instructor, I was struggling to organize classes. I mean, nobody wanted to do classes with me because they were like, everybody I talked to was saying, "Who is GUE? Is GUE a recognized agency? Are they even relevant to recreational diving training?" So these were the common kinds of questions that I got very early in my career as GUE instructor. Now it's different, and there are students who come to me and they say they already know everything because they've read the standards. They've heard from their friends about what to do and what to expect. Many come into the class well prepared because they have already prepared themselves ahead of time. They've taken the steps to be able to succeed in the class. And that's made things a whole lot easier, I think, for the GUE instructor of today.
Back to what one of the very first things I said. I mean, yeah, I've been hearing Gideon Liew's name for quite a
Yes.
while, so I was like, I gotta have you on the podcast. And it was funny too because when I was in Mexico last year in May,
Yep.
and
Hmm.
I think it's Andreas. He was telling me. He's like he trained or did some. I can't remember. He was training with you, or he dives with zero gravity out of there, and then yeah, just all over Southeast Asia. I've heard your name quite a few times, so it's finally nice to have you on the podcast. Um,
Thank you very much.
no,
Thanks, Nate.
no, thank you. So my last question that I
So,
wanted to ask you is I always ask some sort of advice question. Speaking of people getting into GUE training,
mhm.
things of that nature, what is the best piece of advice that you could give to a recreational diver from another agency that wants to come in and do a fundamentals, or they kind of want to start
Mhm.
going down the GUE process? What is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person? Well, actually,
Yep.
answer that, and then I have
So,
another question.
sure.
Sorry. So two last
So
two last
that's okay.
questions. Sorry.
That's fine. I've got the time.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
So, what's a good piece of advice I would give to someone from another agency who is thinking of coming into fundamentals? Don't worry too much. Just come for the class, with an expectation of having fun learning. You do have to come into the class with an open mind, right? There's lots to learn. In fact, all of the instructors that I know in GUE, these are passionate individuals who are very keen to share as much information to help you to be a better diver as much as they can. It's really more of a sharing of passion. I think that at least I would be able to say for pretty much all of the GUE instructors that I know personally, all of them have a deep passion for diving, which is why they're doing what they're doing. As instructors, I'm certain that they are very keen to share as much information to help others be passionate about diving just like they are, right? So the important thing for you is going into a fundamentals class. Don't worry too much. Don't come into the class with too much expectation. Just come into the class with an open mind, ready to learn. And I'm sure you'll be able to take in and learn a lot of stuff. I think that with training, here's an important point that people need to understand as well. And that is in GUE, we offer the training and we offer the approach, the system, the methodology as a choice. So it's not like, do this or else. It's like, okay, this is the system, this is how it works. And we train our instructors to always have the ability to define these are the pros and these are the cons. There was actually a term that I was taught in the old days about this approach, which is we call it the baker's dozen. So it's like come up with 12 reasons, good or bad, for an approach or for a system or for an item that you will use in diving. And then if you come up with more good than bad, more pros than cons, then it's a good idea.
I
Then
like
if
it.
you come up with more cons than pros, then it's probably something you don't want to do. So for me, it's a very simplistic approach, but that's for me, that's how I roll. This is for me. I like things simple. And a lot of the time, if I try to explain things to people in a simplistic way, they're surprised because it's like, oh, we thought that GUE is going to be some complex thing. I mean, it is complex as a holistic approach because it covers everything. But, in order for you to be effective, you need to break it down into something that is practical and simple. In other words, if it isn't something that you can do practically or simply, then it may not be a good practice for you to adopt.
I'm trying to think of how to ask this last one because you might have kind of answered it already. But so now
Yep.
someone's a little bit further along. They are
Yep.
about to come to you. They're in the instructor process and they're about to
Yep.
come be evaluated by Gideon.
Yep.
What can they expect?
If you've already reached the point where you are applying for an evaluation, it means that you've done it all. You understand the approach, the system, you understand the curriculum. You should understand all of that well enough to be able to present that information. For us, the way we evaluate instructors is by making them teach an actual class to actual students. So the standards specifically require me to just take a back seat and watch him or her in action. That's all there is to it. The pressure isn't going to come from me. The pressure is really the students that they are facing. I think that the nice thing is that most of the evaluations I do, I'm convinced that this system works well because many instructors who are evaluated by me come across as I would expect. They have the passion, they have all that information, they are very familiar with the system and are willing to share that information with the students. So that is why, if anybody asks me which instructor is better in GUE, I said all of them. Or at least for most of the instructors that I work with, they are excellent people that I would be willing to learn from myself.
I don't know the pressure is saying, oh, the pressure's on the students. Because sometimes that's the worst pressure, though, is when you know you have
Oh
somebody
yeah.
evaluating you while you're
Oh
teaching.
yeah.
Because I swear it's like I have the worst test syndrome to where I'll know the answers
Yep.
before I'm going in,
Yep.
but once I'm under the pressure of the test, I
Yep.
just fail. And then if I know somebody's watching
Yep.
me, I'm just like, oh man,
Mhm.
This is tough on me right now. But no,
Yeah.
I think that's great advice though.
It's funny because just I just did an evaluation recently, and I remember in the training process, right? I mean, in the ITC that he attended, I was involved as well as an additional trainer, and I was sharing a couple of training techniques. And I think that, the group at the time was skeptical sometimes about, sometimes we would do training and we would act out, or we would talk about how the kind of difficulties and responses that you get from students sometimes. And many of them were very skeptical. They are like, no, students are not going to be like that. They're not going to suddenly run out of control. They're not going to suddenly panic underwater. And I was watching this evaluation with this instructor. The students actually had some issues. They were almost exactly the kind of issues that I was talking about in the ITC. So it was just funny thing when he saw these things, the first thing he did was to look towards me. And I just had a smile on my face because it was like, okay, so you know what I'm talking about now. So yeah, I think that I think one of the things I like or I try to do to remember, regardless of what type of training that I'm providing, is to try to provide the training realistically. I'm not going to teach an instructor how to deal with issues that almost never happen. On the other hand, I think it is important for us to be able to be aware of the kind of things that are common, that do happen. As unexpected as they will be, we need to be ready for it as instructors. I think that people don't understand the kind of liability that diving instructors take upon themselves because it's underwater, man. I mean, you're looking after people, and then you have to be ready for the unexpected. You have to be ready for the worst because those things do happen. Sometimes people respond in the funniest ways, and you need to be ready for it.
Gideon, I absolutely appreciate you coming onto the podcast. Once again, thank you so much for joining. It was an amazing privilege and an honor to have you on. So thank you very, very much.
Nick, the pleasure and the honor is mine. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed this. I think this is a great format to share the passion. If you ever need someone to fill spaces for you, just give me a call.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast.